Well, welcome to the Profits on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Nate Littlewood, and today's guest is Jennifer Lee. Jennifer is the founder and CEO of Entrepreneurship, which is a purpose-driven home decor brand born out of, from what I understand, one of the hardest chapters of her life. What started off as a personal project to basically rebuild and beautify her home and, as I gather, her sense of self, has since evolved into a business that delivers joy, beauty, and empowerment one front door at a time. She's built more than just a product here. She's built and is building a community of women all across the country. And today we're going to be digging into what that journey has looked like for Jennifer from behind the scenes. Jennifer, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Super nice to be here.
Of course, of course. Well, for those who are unfamiliar with Entrepreneurship, maybe we could get started by just talking a little bit about what the company does.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you did a great introduction. And the premise is essentially we deliver faux floral, holiday and seasonal decor to front porches across the country.
Cool. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to really understand the backstory here. From what I understand, you left a marriage, moved in with your parents, and basically rebuilt your life during the COVID pandemic. Could you talk a little bit about that phase of your life, and what did that reinvention kind of teach you about yourself, and how has it kind of shaped the vision of what Entrepreneurship is today?
Yeah. So I always say that the hardest decision I made in my adult life was leaving my marriage, and the scariest decision was starting a business. And when I left my marriage, it was in January of 2020. So this was pre-pandemic. Moved in with my parents for a couple of months, and the real estate market went through the roof. It was not great to try and buy a house during the peak of the pandemic and during a financial turmoil situation of a divorce. And so I got a fixer-upper, as I would like to call it. And my dad was in construction for 45 years. I grew up pre-cell phone days. So I was often helping on side jobs or spec homes or whatever it was that we were doing. And so I was well into my 20s, maybe even 30s, before I learned that not every single woman knows how to use a hammer and read a tape measure and a drill. Then I learned that most men don't know how to do that either. I just wasn't afraid to tackle the project and moved into this house, and just literally the first night repainted the entire garage and just started taking it room by room, ceiling by ceiling, outlet by outlet, right? And I did the whole thing. And I managed a law firm at the time. So all day long, I was managing a large, fairly medium-sized firm. And then at night, I was remodeling all night long into the wee hours of the morning. And it was probably one of the most therapeutic experiences that I could have had, but I didn't know that at the time. And so when I got done, I was about 1,800 hours of sweat equity into my remodel, about 9 months into this house. And I have always been a really big person of first impressions. My background has been in marketing and business development. And I just always think about, when you walk into a space, how does it make you feel? And I don't care whether it is walking into a meeting, into somebody's home for a dinner party, into a hotel, and into your own home. That is your first impression. Even if you've been there 1,000 times before, what does it feel like? And I think a lot of people don't consider, how does it make them feel when they pull into a garage that is disorderly, or into a mudroom that has a lot going on. And just, it's this instant feeling of overwhelm, and I have a lot to do, right? As opposed to walking into a very well organized space that is well kept and just has a feeling of sense of peace. And I think people don't understand what I'm talking about. I always say, walk into a hotel room. How do you feel when you walk into a hotel versus walking into your own home? And I think that you want your home to feel obviously welcoming, but peaceful. And when I was pulling in my driveway of my fixer-upper, The
Mm-hmm.
inside looked beautiful. When I got to the door, it was great. But when I was pulling up
Mm-hmm.
in my driveway, I was not pulling up to a home that I felt proud of. You couldn't see the
Mm-hmm.
house numbers very well. It looked outdated. It still looked like a fixer-upper, but I was out of time, money, and energy. And I was like, how do I add curb appeal and help
Mm-hmm.
somebody be able to find my house easier without spending a lot of time, money, and energy? Because I was out of all of those. And I started thinking through, and I was like, well, I'm like, if we just started with the house numbers, like I could update the little light fixture on the front porch, paint my garage door, paint my front door, and update these house numbers that were kind of above the garage. They were old, they were falling off, you couldn't see them. And I didn't want to put a wreath on my front door that I just got done painting because I feel like it always gets scratched. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'm just going to see what's out there. And I started Googling modern house number signs. That was super boring. There wasn't much out there. And then I started looking at, like what are some of the options? The only one I found had this vertical sign with the little planter box. And I was like, similar to what we make today. And I was like, well, that's kind of cute, but I live in Nebraska. What are you going to plant
Mm-hmm.
in there that's going to grow? You're going to have to water it twice a day. All of the reasons to not do this,
Mm-hmm.
but I made it anyway. And then after I got done and I decided it was going to absolutely have to be something artificial that didn't require water because I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
time and I didn't want to worry about it. And then I went to the craft store and it took me 45 minutes to source the materials, design in my head what I had, $38 to buy all of the materials, drive home. I had to still put the thing together. I had Spanish moss all over the garage. I had to find my wire cutters. And I was like, this is a lot of work. Doesn't somebody ship me just a little kit? I just need a kit, to go in here with
Mm-hmm.
all of my stuff. And nobody did. And that was really how
Mm-hmm.
the business was born. It was a reoccurring revenue business model in front of me that
Mm-hmm.
made sense. And I 100% knew that
Mm-hmm.
women love to identify their home in a personal way. There was way more of a market out there than just my little front porch that needed a slight curb appeal improvement. And this really had reaching. And in addition to the
Mm-hmm.
homeowners, I thought about the people who lived in assisted living and, how do I help them identify their doors? So we have a smaller version that also accommodates any of the assisted living communities and apartments.
Got it. Okay, that's quite the story. Quite the story. So when we were chatting the other day, one of the things I remember is you mentioned that one of the best decisions that you'd ever made was simply starting and getting going on this. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I inferred from that that there was maybe a period of time when you had an inkling or some perhaps interest in entrepreneurship, or maybe even this business specifically, but maybe that there was a period in which you were held back or that there was something stopping you here. Is that the case? And, if so, was there some belief or fear or voice in your head or something that, maybe delayed the start of this business for longer than?
It was specifically this business, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
I had always thought about I went back for my executive MBA in 2013. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I had thought that I might be wanted to be a law firm practice management consultant, but I had small children and I knew that it was going to require a lot of spousal support and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of travel time. And it just wasn't going to fit in my life right then and there. I also
Mm-hmm.
wasn't sure I wanted to do that particular
Mm-hmm.
profession
Mm-hmm.
for the next 30 years. And so I finished my MBA, but I put the idea on hold. I did look at some franchises. I looked at some other ways of like being an entrepreneur. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
felt right. Nothing felt right. I probably explored, I would say, a solid 10 to 15 different business ideas of whether that was starting something on my
Mm-hmm.
own or doing a franchise. And I didn't like any of them. This
Mm-hmm.
was so not on the bingo card. I mean, this job, when it sort of came in front of me of like, you could start a company and there are women who would buy this. And I knew without a doubt that I was right, but it was
Mm-hmm.
like a deep breath of where I thought, are you kidding? Like you are a single mom, fairly
Mm-hmm.
recently divorced,
Mm-hmm.
just getting through we're still in a pandemic mode. You don't have time, energy, or money to start a to start a company. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one person, and I don't know I'm sure you know the statistics. Like most founders don't tell anybody for a year that they're working on
Mm-hmm.
something because they're afraid that somebody's going to steal their idea or tell them it's a bad idea, talk them out about whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
was in that category, but I knew that there was one person that I had to tell in order to go forward with this. And I was 99% sure she was going to tell me no, and I was not going to do this.
Who was this person? This is a
My mom,
friend or your
my
mom?
mom. My mom is been in corporate, very level-headed, knows me better than
Hmm.
anybody. Not entrepreneurial exactly, but very
Hmm.
creative, but also very logistics oriented. And I thought, my mom, there's no way she's going to think that this is a good idea. But I knew I would need her help, at least with my kids, in order to move forward with it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I spent that first weekend that I came up with this idea, and I didn't tell her. I don't think I slept or ate. All I did was build out prototypes, build out the business model, all the Excel spreadsheets, like really to make sure, like, do I just think this is a good idea, or is legit there a business model that to be had?
Hmm.
And when I got done with that and knew the answer was yes, I thought, okay, I'm going to tell her. And so I talked to her, but it was like, it wasn't an I'm going to do this. It was like, I have an idea I want to talk to you about.
Hmm.
And I was shocked. She's like, actually, I think it's a really great idea and I'll help you. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, now I have to do this, right? Like she gave me the answer that I wasn't prepared for.
You were expecting her to say no, this
No,
is terrible, and then what would have happened if she did tell you that this
I
was a
wouldn't have
bad
done it.
idea?
I wouldn't
Okay,
have done it.
wow.
I would not have. And what she said was, I think it's a good idea. And
Hmm.
I'm retiring in a few months and I'll help you. And I was like, okay. So she did, and, has been by my side and my rock through all of this. And that was 4 years ago. And so yeah, it's been a great journey. It really has been.
Hmm. Wow, awesome. So, my understanding is that this has evolved into very much a sort of story about empowerment and community, and you feel very passionately, from what I gather, about the people that you're working with and the lives that you're enriching here. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And was there a particular time or phase or trigger when you kind of realized that this is about more than just shipping product, and started to get a bigger sense of the mission and purpose here?
Yeah, it's so interesting that when you start a company, I mean, again, I was in corporate for 20, 25 years, and we, I had a lot of training around culture and mission and vision and values and how important it is for a company. What I never thought about prior to owning my own company is like, where does that come from? Where it doesn't like I suppose that there's different arguments, but it's founder led for the most part. And when you are on day one, it is me, myself, and I, right? Like there isn't anybody else that is helping you form a culture. And then you hire
Hmm.
your first employee, and then you
Yeah.
hire your second, and then you hire your third. And I don't know, somewhere around maybe number 4 or 5, one of them asked, "What's our mission statement?" And I was like, well, that's a great question. Maybe we ought to give a little bit of thought to that, right? Maybe we ought to think about what is our culture, right? What do I want it to be with more conscious intention? But I think
Yeah.
at the beginning of a company, and I think how a company ultimately ends up, it is founder led. It's heart led leadership, right? Like it's the passion. Kendra Scott says that she has the sister rule in their company. And I've always loved that because I think I treat the same way. I was raised in a steakhouse that was my very like first experience to customer experience and customer service. And I was 4, and I remember my mom worked in this restaurant, and I remember Saul Har was this old Jewish man who owned this restaurant, and he and his wife, and he was just the kindest person. And he said, I just want to tell you one thing, the customer is always right. And I was 4, and
Hmm.
I remember that.
Hmm. Wow.
It's just stuck with me. Everything about whether my customer has been a lawyer that I worked for or my customer was retail in
Hmm.
front of me, it didn't matter. I knew that they were right. And so that is how I went into this company, saying that's where I love Kendra Scott. She's like, how would you treat your sister? How would you handle it if this was, her in
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
situation? So I think that it being very from the beginning, me knowing I've always worked in very male dominated industries, and
Hmm.
this got to be my own culture that I wasn't walking into somebody else's. I got to create it. And
Hmm. Hmm.
women, they they have so many different things that they're juggling at any one given time, and they are thinking about 50 different things all the time. And
Hmm.
you don't have to give them, if you hire the right people,
Mm.
steps 1 through 10 to get things done. You don't have, all you
Right.
need to say is, this is what I need done and when I need it done by, and let them figure out how to do it in their life, juggling their
Mm.
kids and their spouses and their moms and their siblings and friends and sports activities and all of the things. And so when we created this culture, it was really driven around, we don't have set hours. We want to be
Mhm.
able to respect each other and our lives for what they are. We want it to be fun. We want it to be a place we want
Mhm.
to come to work every day. And that is who we have continued to attract over and over.
Mm.
It is
Mhm.
like, you can't, culture is, it is intentional, but it also, you are who you kind of attract. And I think that
Yeah.
it's been very organic who we've brought in. So we have our foundational team, but then we added another line, which became 1099 design consultants that wanted
Mhm.
to work as a boots on the ground sales team for us.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was a different reason that they were attracted to us, but still based on the same foundational values of what they wanted to do. All of the women in our company love faux floral. They love porches. They love helping other women. They love bringing women
Mm.
together in community. The number one thing we do is deliver joy. I don't care whether they are dead or alive, meaning they're fake from the beginning or they are real. Women love flowers. They love getting flowers. And so when we started doing some customer research a couple of years ago and said, what is the number one reason? Because we have a 95% retention rate over a 12-month period of time in the subscription box world.
95%
95%.
retention. That is insane.
Insane.
Like there are SaaS businesses that aren't even that
Insane.
good.
Insane. And so we
Wow.
started doing research why. Like what is the secret sauce here? And the number one word that we continued to hear from our customers was joy. They
Mm.
just loved how happy this made them. And what it was interesting because the business is sort of divided into, there's a team that produces the personalized signs, and our customer
Mhm.
experience starts there. So if somebody orders a sign, they get a personal text, nothing automated, a personal text
Mm.
from a designer who says, here is the first proof of your sign. Does this look okay? Do you like it? And there is this very unique, like, AI didn't do this. Like, it's just this like instant connection where the customer's like, wow, here's my expectations for this company. Whatever it was, it just went to here. And so then the other side of the company, once that first order is produced, they're now on the subscription side. And the women who work in the subscription box faux floral component side are women that are semi-retired. They love crafts. They love hot glue guns. They love making
Mm.
this. And everything that they do is with care and it's wrapped. It's not a manufactured made in China. And our
Yeah.
customers know that. When they get it and they take it out of the box, this is adorable. It doesn't look like it came from a craft fair. I'm not saying that. Like, it's just adorable, like, oh my gosh, this is for me. Somebody did this for me
Mhm.
because most things aren't done for women. Women do them themselves.
Mm.
And it was easy and it brought them joy. It was literally 1 minute to switch it out. It wasn't a craft
Mhm.
project. It didn't take them any time. Their front porch looks great and they're moving on. So that is, and then not only that, 30% of our customers have bought a second subscription for their mom, for their sister, for
Mm.
their office, for their second
Wow.
home. So I think it says a lot about the culture of the company, of where that all comes back to, of just heart-centered leadership, customer service focused, and delivering joy.
Wow. Wow. I hadn't appreciated that your retention rates were that good. And I just, for the sake of the audience, I want to kind of circle back on that point because it's really important. A typical retention rate for an e-commerce business is, I'm used to seeing, 30, 35 is not bad. For a lot of homewares, single purchase items, it might be, 5 or 10%. I would, I'm very impressed when I come across a business that's got 50 or 60% retention rate. So to be north of 90, that is, phenomenal from like a customer financial math perspective. And if you've also got the benefit that customers are recruiting and referring other customers for you, that's yeah, phenomenal in terms of the math. I guess there's a lot that other founders could learn from you in terms of that. You've already shared a lot about, your approach and how you've gotten there. But is there anything else that you can think of that may be contributing to that? Any decisions that you've intentionally taken in product design, user experience?
I think the number one thing is that we keep saying yes. And that
Mm-hmm.
is contrary to a lot of advice given
Mm-hmm.
in startup world. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I question it too, because, and I've referenced this article actually, I reread it and referenced it to my team a couple of times. Paul Graham's famous article of do things that don't scale, right?
Right, right, right.
And so much of everything that I've done in this company, I would say, has been based upon that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is there a market? And then figure out how to make it scalable. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
really good at processes of being able to, my Gallup strengths, my number one is strategic, two is maximizer, and three is arranger. So
Mm-hmm.
I can take a problem and say, this is where we're trying to go. And then how do we get there in the highest ROI? And what are all of the pieces, energy, resources, money that it's going to take to get there? And
Mm-hmm.
so I've not been so worried about the things that don't scale, but always very aware of how do we make this scalable if this works? And so
Mm-hmm.
when I use that as an example, it was customers that started saying, like, we originally did monthly and quarterly
Mm-hmm.
subscriptions. We only recently made the change to remove the monthly and only do quarterly. But one of the reasons that kind of came about was because we had so many customers who wanted to celebrate different things. So if you think about, like, we were celebrating sort of the five major holidays, if you will, in the United States, and then the seasons, but there was some overlap. And, 50% of our customers wanted to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and the other half were like, I don't care. I just want spring. And, we have a couple of customers in Canada. They wanted Canadian Independence Day, not 4th of July. Or we had customers who wanted a Juneteenth kit.
Mm-hmm.
Pride Month, like my son's
Mm-hmm.
graduating, I want a graduation kit, I want a birthday kit, I want all these kits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept saying yes, and that was creating the customer service standpoint of being like, entry in, we'll do anything that we want, but it was also creating the scalability challenge of company is
Mm-hmm.
growing, how do we keep saying yes and accommodating everybody?
Yep.
And so one of the other trends that we had seen over the last 2 years was not necessarily a change in our churn rate, but when customers were coming on board, they were originally, the first 2 years in business, about 75 to 80% of them were subscribing to the monthly Decor kits and the rest were
Mm-hmm.
quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, based on data and talking to other founders in e-commerce, that it's primarily economy driven. But over the last 2 years, particularly in the subscription box world, there was sort of the great subscribe during COVID that lasted into 2021. And then they called it the great unsubscribe. And a lot of subscription boxes started to have a lot of fall off. We
Mm-hmm.
never had the benefit of the great subscribe because we didn't launch until October 1st of 2021. So I guess that's a blessing and a curse. We never felt that. The what we saw launching in 20, like through 2020, the end of 2021, 2022, and about halfway through 2023, 75, 80% were subscribing to monthly. Over the last 18 to 24 months, we've seen that shift, and more substantially in the last 6 to 9 months, 50-50 were subscribing to
Mm-hmm.
monthly and the other half were moving to quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of lead through, I call it data, faith, and guts. And data is like, what do you know? What do you see? What do the numbers tell you? And,
Mm-hmm.
where's the trends? And then the guts is like, what's your intuition as a founder? What direction are you going? And then
Mm-hmm.
guts is just the courage to make the decision and see it through,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at the data, I felt like we were moving in a direction that we were going to be more successful long term if we focused on the quarterly seasonal subscription. And that was
Mm-hmm.
also initiated by customers asking us to do more. Will you
Mm-hmm.
please do something for my for my front pots, which really are very seasonal. You want spring, summer, fall, winter. I mean, some people are putting Christmas in for sure, but most people are just doing that 4 times a year. So it made more sense from the business perspective to ship quarterly decor kits for the signs, quarterly kits for the pots, the planters out front. If you were going to have a new wreath or a new rug, that was going to be quarterly for the most part. And then add on this holiday and special occasion kit shop, where if you wanted to buy a kit for Halloween, you could. If you want to buy a rug for Halloween, you can. But core business is spring, summer, fall, winter.
Right.
So I don't know if that answers, I probably answered more than one question in there, but that's sort of the evolution of what we've seen and what we've gone to. I don't think the churn rate hasn't changed. It's just been, I think, how people are spending their money has
Mhm.
changed a little bit in the last 2 years.
Interesting. So it sounds like you kind of noticed a pattern or trend in terms of where your customers were going to. And a lot of entrepreneurs would see that and they probably start freaking out like, people are not buying the same way they used to buy. Like, how do I get them to, go back to the behavior that I wanted them to have? But it sounds like you took the opposite strategy, which is you're like, okay, I can see where you're going. Let me help you get there. Like, you actually enabled it rather than tried to resist it, which is a really interesting approach. Have I understood you correctly
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Takes
Cool.
takes a lot of courage. It is a lot of that
Mm,
data, faith, and guts, but it seems
yeah.
it just felt right. Kind of what I
Yeah.
go with. I'm like, I think this makes sense. Don't try and fight it. Just
Yeah.
stay in the flow.
Okay. Data, faith, and guts. I like that. I like it a lot. So tell me, with your data, faith, and guts, what are some of the hardest financial and operational decisions that you have had to make so far, and what made them so difficult? How did you get through them?
All of it. I have
Where
said
to begin?
more than once, I say it regularly. If I would have
Mm,
known then what I
mm,
know now, I never would have gone
mm,
down this path. I'm so grateful that I did. I don't ever want to be misunderstood, but
mm,
I think there's a quote from Alex Hermosi that says something like entrepreneurship is going to be twice as hard as you thought it was going to be, and then times 10, right? Like that's
sounds about
and
right. Yeah.
and expensive and everything. So
Mm,
I think that on the finance side, when I started the company, I just bootstrapped it. I didn't even know you
mm,
could raise money. I was not,
mm,
I knew I was kind of starting a startup, but I didn't really know. And starting a tech startup is different than CPGs. I didn't
mm,
know that it was going to be much more difficult to raise capital for a
mm,
CPG company than tech. It's harder as a female. Every single
mm.
statistic shows that.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know that people would give you money to start a company. So I bootstrapped most of it for a long time. And then it was like, okay, I got the opportunity to get into an accelerator. And so the first
Mm,
equity I gave away in the company was the opportunity to be in the accelerator.
mm,
And that was, a 14-week program that was kind of like a mini MBA in raising venture capital. And
mm,
then I chose after that, instead of giving away equity, to do promissory notes
mm,
to kind of get me to the next level.
mm,
Then I bootstrapped some more. Then I did my first raise, but I only allowed women investors in the
mm,
company.
mm.
And that is still to this day, it is 100% woman owned, woman led, woman
Mhm.
run. I mean, everything about it.
So every employee is a female too, I
Yep,
assume?
yep,
Mhm.
yep.
Mhm.
And so that's not, I mean, it's just, I think, again, like you are who you attract. Like it's just kind
Mhm.
of like that's been very organic, but those were the cheerleaders and everybody that keeps rallying.
Mm.
I would say that right now we're at the next kind of big, deep breath space
Mhm.
of the version that got you here won't get you there. And so there are on the e-commerce side, there is a beautiful opportunity to scale that. And I have proven the business model. I know, I know what it's going to take. And I know that I don't currently have the team to get it done. And
Mhm.
so I kind of am holding this space saying, I'm willing to bring in the right co-founder at this point to literally have that ownership mentality of scaling the e-commerce components of it. And we're talking, dozens of A/B testing on the website for, consumers buying psychology and all of the
Mm,
ad creative management that goes along with it, all of the SEO. I mean, just there, it's massive, right? All of the funnels. And
mm,
I mean,
mm,
it's all solid right now, solid.
mhm,
But the differential of going from the version that we have to the next level is significant. And it's a major investment, major
mhm,
lift.
mhm,
In the meantime, there's this other side where I still go back to it's doing things that don't scale and it's
mhm,
testing. It's the pipeline piece of these in-home pop-ups we're doing, building a boots on the ground sales team. Like, am I building an
mhm,
MLM? I don't know. I don't really think so. That wasn't the intention, but maybe. Am
mhm,
I, the planters are taking off in ways that I never saw before. I never had the
mm,
opportunity. And we're getting in requests on wholesaling and white labeling and different,
mm,
like, for example, lawn mowing companies have had requests for years from their customers of, do you do planters? Well, any landscaping company that does planters knows that they are extremely time consuming. They're hard to make money on. People want them, but they
mm,
don't want to pay for it. And
mm,
consumers especially know how expensive they are as well. And there is just an income bracket that can afford somebody to come in and do it and take care of it. And then there's the bracket that either doesn't have it or will do it themselves. And then there's a whole middle market of like, I'd pay, but I'm not going to pay X, but I'll pay this,
mm.
right? And
Right.
so what we're finding without even seeking it is that there's some of those businesses that would be interested in working with us, which would be a great channel. I just there's and then kind of the third, so it's the pop-ups, the planters, and then porches. What else doesn't
Mhm,
scale? The women who are saying, "Can you just come and do this for me?" Like, anybody can order something off of Amazon and get it delivered to their door. But how do you add the level of service for the customers who want somebody to just do it? They want to know it looks great. They want their front porch to be clean, and they want the
mm.
confidence that it's all done correctly. And
So they're physically wanting someone to come to their house to
correct,
do it.
correct.
Wow, okay.
So we're
Talk about things that
currently,
don't scale. All
yep,
right.
yep, but there is a market there. So
Yeah.
those are sort of the three channels that are in the, I would say, pipeline of testing things that don't scale.
Mm, mhm, mhm,
And again, they will someday. They can.
mm,
Everything is scalable in some way.
mm,
The e-commerce side is like, okay, I just need somebody who knows how to scale the
mhm,
the consumer product packaged good for women that are 45 to 60 years old and manage all of it, because it's not just one piece. And even if you hire an agency to just do, there's so many agencies out there, and they're lovely people, right? But you have to have a hub that knows what the right hand and the left hand are doing. You have to have the funding behind it to make everything work, and somebody really
yeah,
managing it. And
yeah,
so there's skill set, and then there's time, and it's just as the company has grown and where the opportunities are at, that's where I see. So I have gotten through every financial challenge we've had, just
mhm,
being on strategic about the next place that we're going. What's the next thing that we need? How is the best way to get there? Have I done
mhm.
everything right? I don't know. I think one of the hardest things as a founder is to not compare yourself to somebody else's journey.
Totally, yeah.
It's very hard. There isn't a playbook out there, right? Nobody's done
Mm,
what
mm,
you've done. And so
mhm,
would I do it different? I don't know, maybe. But every single decision that I've got that has gotten me to where I am is what will lead me to the next place that I have to
mm,
go. And
mm,
you can't rewrite it. So I think men and women, again, think differently as founders. Not right,
mhm,
not wrong.
mm,
Definitely multi-time founders. There is value in having done this before. I think
mhm,
people are so willing to give you advice, and most of it is free, right? There's
mm.
so many resources out there to learn from, but there's also just lessons that there's no way to learn them until you do them. And,
Totally,
you
yeah.
think, I think Facebook ads are a great example for us.
Mm,
A great example. I mean, I have tried with good intent, three
mhm,
different ways, if you will, because everybody says they should work for us. And The next agency that I have that says, well, actually, I've already used this line, but there's no way these are going to work for you. I'll say, okay, you do them, you finance it, and I'll give you a
Hmm.
percentage of the profit because I can tell
Yeah.
you from these three other experiences, they're not working for us.
Yeah.
And so it's hard again because it's like the logic and what worked for somebody else, and again, people who if you haven't done this before, there's so many complexities, right? There's the creative and the placement of it and a lot of different ways to skin a cat, but I just think it's interesting
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to go off of somebody else's playbook to say why
Absolutely.
should have worked, right? Doesn't always.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a huge believer in, I guess, personalizing one's own journey as it relates to entrepreneurship. And there's so many gurus and spouters of wisdom out there who will tell you that, hey, if you want to grow a business, this is the way you got to do it. And it's like, no, that's your way of growing a business, and I'm happy that it worked for you. But I'm me. I'm good at different things. I don't enjoy all the same things you do. So I need to kind of figure out my own way of growing the business and, forge a path that works for me. I'm 100% on board with that, which I guess brings me to the next question, which is that at any given day as a founder, I'm guessing that you're overwhelmed by things that are screaming for your attention,
Mhm.
whether it's marketing or supply chain or HR or legal, whatever. There's always stuff that's trying to pull you in different directions. How do you go about navigating that? And what are some of the decisions that are easy to make for you when it comes to focus and where to give your attention? And what are some of the decisions that you're maybe still struggling with a little bit?
Yeah, never an easy answer to that. I think managing a company for 18 years before owning my own helped tremendously with that.
Hmm. How
As the executive director of two different law firms, I mean, I was
mm,
balancing 12 different partners who were all my bosses at any one time.
right.
The team of people who worked, with them, with me. And essentially in that role, I'm managing, I mean, it's HR, it's finance, it's, the fire marshal coming through on any given day, right? Like it doesn't matter. It's all the things. So I think a lot of founders, um, I mean, the average age of a founder is 42. So everybody comes from a different point of view of experience, but a lot of founders have not had the opportunity to run a company for as long as I did. So running a company doesn't scare me. Um,
Hmm.
Balancing my time within that is not terrible. It's okay. The hardest part for me was figuring out how do you start a startup, right? Like, I mean, how
Hmm.
do you take an idea from infancy to market? And that's, I
Hmm.
think, still the challenge, 100%.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of problems are always solved with sales. And it's
Mm.
how do you, when you talk about focusing your time, I think if you, the easy answer to sketch it out on
Hmm.
paper is that nothing should be
Hmm.
more important on my calendar than focusing on revenue and sales.
Hmm.
When you start to dissect that, that gets really
Hmm.
messy, right? So
Totally.
somebody could
Hmm.
say, okay, is being on this podcast today spending an hour of your time generating sales? Well,
Hmm.
maybe, maybe not.
Hmm.
Might be somebody 2 years from now who buys, right? Everybody wants
Hmm.
sort of to give you input on how your time should be spent.
Mm.
Relationships at the end of the day, and I just actually posted, I write a lot on LinkedIn and I just wrote about this. Like at the end of the
Mm.
day, everything is competing for our attention that is usually electronic in front of us. It's the screen in front of
Yeah.
us, right? And whether it's emails or texts or all of the social media platforms that we have and all of the wonderful AI that's coming out is fantastic. But at the end of the day,
Mm.
it's still the relationships that get business done. It's still
Mm.
whether it's a team member that's in front of you that is
Mm.
only going to perform and do their job as well as they can because they respect the company and they
Mhm.
respect the leader, or whether it's you're negotiating a deal and it's because of somebody that you knew, who you knew, or it's at a networking event.
Mm.
I mean, there's just so much that's in relationships. And so I think the hardest part about everything competing against your time is making sure that at the end of the day, you're still taking care of people first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost, and then
Mm-hmm.
getting everything else on the to-do list done. And
Mm,
there is no easy answer. And some days are way more overwhelming than others for sure. But
mm,
trying to take care of like my mental and just physical health has been the most
mm-hmm.
grounding of like, I have to be, I have to make sure that I'm in the right place every day to do the next thing in front of me. And that's my philosophy. Like get up, dress up, show up, and do the next thing in front of you. Just
Mm.
keep going.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Lots to take in there. How do you know when you've made a bad decision about time or attention allocation?
No bad decisions. Every
Mm-hmm.
decision is it's just feedback, right? Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, there's just feedback.
Feedback, learning.
Yep. And I think that's where there's a whole
Mm.
lot of faith over fear. Like there are definitely
Mm-hmm.
things where you can play the game of woulda, shoulda, coulda all day long, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you just have to believe that everything is happening exactly as it is for a reason and it's in perfect timing, even when it does not feel that way.
Yeah. Which I'm guessing is a lot. If your experience as a founder was anything like mine, I remember thinking that a lot. Tell me if it sounds like this business has a fantastic future ahead of it, and I'm really excited to see what you do with it and where you take it. But as a hypothetical, if this business were for some unforeseen reason to end tomorrow, what would you hope that people say you stood for?
Well, I think I would tell you that my next venture, if you will, and I don't think they're separate and apart. I speak a fair amount, and the number one piece of feedback that I get is from generally it's women, and that there's an inspiring story and that they walked away with more courage than they had to do something that they hadn't
Hmm.
considered. I think that my part of my mission of being here is just sharing what I've learned. I mean, I look at my business as $1 million education. I have, 20 years of
Mm,
corporate experience before that in medical and legal,
hmm.
a lot of formal education on top of that. And I just feel like I have a responsibility and a duty to share and
Hmm.
not be selfish with the knowledge.
Mm,
I think that the heart-centered leadership and just doing the right thing, but making bold decisions is part of that. I
hmm.
think it goes back to that data, faith, and guts framework. Women
Hmm.
in general have a hard time making decisions. I mean, I always
Mm,
say just go into a nail salon on a Saturday and look at how long it takes these women to pick out a color that they're going to live on their nails for 2 weeks. And I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of time and,
Yeah.
decisions
Yeah.
that go into that, and I it kinda cracks me up, but it's like but to my point, right?
Yeah.
Those are decisions that they have a hard time making, and so when we talk about big decisions and there's a lot of
Mm,
women who it's part of our culture, we are people pleasers, and we think that by doing everything for everyone else first will make us
hmm.
happy, and we have
Hmm.
taken we've tried to be the best, daughter and sibling and mom and wife and all of these things. And then you get
Mm,
to call it midlife crisis or whatever, but all of a sudden they're not happy. There's a lot of women out
mm,
there who
mm.
are just not happy. They don't even know what happy is anymore. I always think about the Runaway Bride movie and Julia Roberts was, talking about and Richard Gere's yelling at her that she doesn't even know what kind of scramble, what kind of eggs she likes. With this guy, it was over
Mm,
easy. And with this guy, it was scrambled with a side or whatever. But I think it's true. Like you
mm,
get to this place where you're just like, what makes you happy? What lights your soul on fire? And what gives you
mhm,
energy and makes you show up as the best version of yourself for everyone else in your life? And so
mhm,
I
mhm,
think that I have lived authentically.
mhm,
I have been true to myself and it has been heart-centered and I love life and
mm,
I just am not afraid to make bold choices and I want to help
mhm,
women learn how to have the confidence to make their own choices and live their own life and
mm,
be happy.
mm. That's amazing. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing it. I love that. So to kind of wrap things up here, if you could go back now and whisper something in the ear of the younger version of yourself, younger Jennifer, who is just about to get started on this business, and you could say anything you want to her, what would you say?
God, that's such an interesting question. I go back and forth between you're gonna make it, don't worry, and then like do it. Oh my gosh, that's so funny, the dichotomy. I think it would just be like, this is gonna be the hardest thing you've ever done. You think you've been tested, but this is gonna test you in ways that you've never
Mm,
thought of or dreamt of.
mm,
But you're gonna be the strongest version of anyone that you
mm.
could have imagined when you get through it.
I love that. Cool. Well, Jennifer, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story with me. You've taught me about data, faith, and guts. I love that model. I'm going to steal it probably and try to apply it to my own work. You've taught me about, I'm really struck by the way that you've incorporated mission and purpose into this business and the way that it's just so multifaceted. Like there is just so much here in terms of, how you're thinking about staffing, how you're thinking about leadership, how you're thinking about, what you're doing for your customers, and also, the role model that you're trying to be for other women who might be, on the verge of entrepreneurship and, thinking about doing something like this. So I'm really, really struck by that. And kudos to you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
If people want to get hold of you, you mentioned earlier that you may even be looking for a co-founder. If that sounds interesting to someone, or if other folks out there have got other stuff that they would like to, get in contact with you about, or if they just like to learn more about what you're doing, where should they go? I'll drop all these links in the
Yeah,
show notes, by the
yeah.
way.
If they are curious about Entry Envy and any of the business that we have,
Mm-hmm.
entryenvy.com. And
Mm-hmm.
if they are interested in connecting directly with me, it's just Jennifer at entrepreneural.com, and I'd be happy to visit with them.
Okay, perfect.
And follow
Well,
me
thank
on
you
LinkedIn
again.
too. Drop that link in as well for LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
I think you know this, Nate, but I
Mm-hmm.
share very openly the startup
Mm-hmm.
side of the business on LinkedIn, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
share that on Facebook and Instagram. So
Okay,
you can follow me in
good to
lots
know.
of places, but that's the only place you get kind of this side of the story as the book is being written.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Cool. Well, thank you again, Jennifer. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I wish you best of luck with the business and looking forward to seeing where you take this all from here. Thank you
Thank you
again.
so much. Appreciate it.